everyone, and welcome back. This is How to Draw a Portrait. This series is in 3 parts, and this is part 2. Part 1 was on sketching, and now we'll go over inking, so let's get started. So now that we have our sketch, we can ink, and some people think of inking as you're just tracing over your drawing with black ink, but I think of it more as you're fine-tuning your sketch. You don't exactly trace, but you do let your sketch be a guide as you put down the ink. But since we're inking in Photoshop and not with real ink, I'm using the pen tool to put down black lines. And my method of inking is using the pen tool to make an enclosed shape rather than just a line. And I feel like it gives a cleaner and sharper looking line. So once I have my shape, I right click on the image and go to Fill Path, and when the window appears, I usually stay with the default settings and I click OK. The pen tool can be kind of tricky to use, so just make sure you practice with it. Some things that I can tell you that I had to figure out the hard way is that if you want to move a path point that you had already put down, simply select the Move tool or press V on your keyboard and hold down Control or Command and replace it wherever you want. Another thing to keep in mind is that whenever I put down a point, no matter what, I always click and drag it slightly. This way, whenever you have a point, 2 little levers appear on either side of the point, and those help you control the roundness of the line that you want to make. If you put down more points and the little levers disappear, simply hold down the Control or Command and click on the point. Then the little levers will reappear and you can adjust the curved line as to however you want it. Whenever I ink the eyebrows, I always fill them completely in with black because I just don't like coloring in eyebrows. I can't ever find a way to color them in, so I always just fill them in black. For the eyes or anything that's a circle shape, I switch from the pen tool to the elliptical marquee tool. And when I have it the way I want, I right click and go to Stroke Selection. And I do the same thing if I ever need to ink in a square shape too. The reason I do it that way is because the marquee tools give perfect shapes, and the selection option gives nice crisp lines. The pen tool has a stroke path option too, but I can't ever get the lines to look as crisp as I do when I use the fill option. So I use this method throughout the entire inking process, and I try to keep all the lines roughly the same width. If a line is looking too thick, you can always go back and move the path points closer together. For the hair, I like to keep the lines really curvy. And the secret to getting a nice curvy line when using the pen tool is by trying to keep the points down to a minimum. It's easier to make a curvy line when you don't have so many points to adjust. Sometimes if you have too many points, you may get a random sharp point in your shape when really you just want a nice fluid line. What you could do for the hair though to bring some more depth to it is by having the lines vary in thickness and length. So some lines could be big and bold while others are nice and thin. Same thing with length, some can be short while others are long. I usually put a good amount of lines in the hair just to give it some shape. You can see that the lines sort of follow the shape of the head and then they fall down to her shoulders where they form around the body and they sort of group together. You can see that there's one line in particular on the right side of the canvas where the hair is sort of feathered, and that sort of brings more depth to the hair. You can kind of see the hair falls down into her face and then sort of folds back behind her head while some of the hair is brought forward in front of her shoulder. And this really does push the depth of the hair. So that's really it for inking. I simply use the pen tool to make black shapes that appear to be lines. They bring depth and they give a crisp, clean line to the overall drawing. If you're interested, I have another inking tutorial that goes a little bit more into the pen tool and inking here on my channel. If you want to learn how to color the portrait next, stay tuned for part 3.